Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So this week, Anthropic's CEO Ann Claude, co-founder, published a 20,000 word piece entitled The Adolescence of Technology, which reveals his top predictions for the future of AI and humanity. So coming up in this week's briefing, we'll take a closer look at some of these predictions and use them as a framework to provide some context to some of the latest AI updates from this week, including some powerful new updates to Google Gemini and Chrome, a new benchmark that tests whether AI agents can really replace humans, and perspectives from some of the world's leading chief product officers at companies like Microsoft, Asana, Pinterest, and more. So stay tuned for all of that, and if you enjoy the weekly AI briefing, then hit the like and the subscribe button. So this new piece from Anthropic CEO is 20,000 words long. So don't worry, we're not going to go through everything in this video. Instead, I've pulled out some of the points that resonated most with me, and then used this as a scaffold to provide some additional context around this week's updates. The full piece is definitely worth a read, and so I'll pop that into the description so that you can read that in your own time as well. And so we'll start with the first prediction, which is that 50% of entry-level white-collar jobs will be disrupted in the next 1 to 5 years. In the piece, he predicts AI could displace half of all entry-level white-collar jobs within this time frame, even as AI accelerates economic growth. This is based on AI's rapid advancement in cognitive tasks, its broad capabilities across different fields, and its ability to quickly fill in any capability gaps. And this week, we saw some real-world evidence of this start to emerge. Amazon announced job cuts of 16,000 people across its corporate workforce, and Pinterest announced in its latest security filings that it is cutting 15% of its workforce. So in this memo, they say that the company is redirecting savings to AI-powered products and capabilities. So whether this is a genuine transformation or AI washing, which is where companies use AI cost savings exercises to boost their stock prices, it still signals that the labor market disruption that Dario is warning about in his piece is already beginning. Anthropic itself also launched interactive tools in Claude this week, which means that users can now use apps directly inside the chat interface without switching tabs. So some of the early tools available include things like Amplitude, Asana, Slack, Canva, and Figma, and this could have an impact on the job market as workers become increasingly more productive by adding more and more SaaS capabilities into a single interface through these types of apps. So just before Christmas, if you remember, ChatGPT did something similar with its own apps. But unlike ChatGPT, Anthropic currently dominates the enterprise market with around 40% market share. And this means that Claude is more likely to succeed in its vision to become the de facto workplace AI product. If companies are already using Anthropic's APIs, then asking these employees to switch to Claude for their everyday interactions with SaaS products seems more likely than OpenAI being able to convince them to use ChatGPT. There are still some genuine UX questions around this interface. So for example, while completing some tasks inside Claude's UI makes sense, for other more intricate use cases, I still think it's super frustrating and users are just better off opening up the apps they're trying to use. One risk for SaaS companies in particular is that as Claude learns more about the products that users interact with, increasingly capable AI agents could eventually clone these products entirely. So this could be similar to the Amazon playbook, who have been previously accused of identifying successful niche marketplace products and then launching their own cheaper versions of those products. One of the early partners in this is Asana, and their chief product officer said this week that this represents a fundamental shift in how people use software. So in his view, the chat interface becomes the execution layer where you get little tidbits of information like status updates and insights. And then the core Asana product is where you leave the chat interface to dig deeper into a more traditional UI on their SaaS platform. So Anthropic's own product releases lean heavily towards Dario's prediction that white-collar jobs will be disrupted. But what do the latest research papers say? So this week, a new benchmark was published. This is called the Apex Agents Benchmark, and this is where AI agents were tested on realistic 1 to 2 hour professional tasks across areas like investment banking, consulting, and law. And while 75% still fail complex scenarios on their first attempt, Gemini topped the leaderboard, showing rapid progress towards the country of geniuses capability level that Dario talks about in his piece. So this test involved 480 tasks across 33 realistic scenarios, and researchers called these worlds. These tasks would typically take professionals 1 to 2 hours on average to complete, and each world contains around 166 files and 9 different applications, so things like spreadsheets, docs, email, and so on. Gemini came out on top of this, but the main takeaway here is that even with the best models, 75% of agents still fail on their first attempt at more complex worst-case scenarios. It'll be fascinating to see how these benchmark scores change throughout later this year. The second prediction from Dario's piece is that AI may soon do the entire software engineering job end to end. Dario notes that in just the last 2 years, AI has gone from barely writing a single line of code to the point where some of the strongest engineers I've ever met are now handing over almost all of their coding to AI. He predicts that soon AI may be able to complete the entire task of a software engineer end to end, and that Claude Opus 4.5 already performs better on Anthropic's performance engineering interview than any human interviewee in the company's history. The creator of Claude Code also echoes this sentiment, and this week he said that pretty much 100% of his code is now written by AI. And so if AI enables non-engineers to build software products end to end, then what does this mean for the future of SaaS? If we take a look at some real-world evidence this week, we can see that in a new piece from the Wall Street Journal this week, they say that software stocks are plummeting. So for example, Salesforce, Adobe, and ServiceNow have now lost over 30% of their value since 2025, and investors are increasingly being spooked by the prospect that customers can build their own custom tools faster than they can negotiate enterprise contracts, which is exactly the kind of economic disruption that Dario describes in his piece. A new piece over on The Verge this week brought this concept to life. So in this piece, the writer explains how she built a custom app which lets her control all of the devices in her home. She explains that she used Claude Code to vibe code a wildly overcomplicated smart home. After years of trying to switch to the Home Assistant, she says, Claude Code got there mostly in one afternoon. So in this example, she built her own custom dashboard, which shows her all of the connected devices in her home. And while the finished product might not look like something that an Apple software designer would be proud of, the writer says that she likes to think that it's not far off. And as you can see from these screenshots, it looks pretty good. But on the flip side, large companies like JP Morgan say that they have no plans to replace enterprise software like Jira. Ticketmaster's president and the former CPO of Square agrees with this assessment. And he says that it's foolish to think that his company would spend any time saving a few bucks at the opportunity cost to the core business. In his view, why build internal software products when they distract from the core goal of adding value to your users? And so it's true that there is an opportunity cost today. But what happens, let's say, in 10 years' time if AI agent swarms are so capable that they can not only build internal software, but also maintain it? If there is a close to zero opportunity cost of building and maintaining this internal software, then why would companies bother to outsource it? I posted this update on Substack Notes, and one of the readers of the newsletter said that they're already seeing this play out in real time. They say that for context, I'm working inside some of these companies that you mentioned, and that this is a real thing that salespeople now need to answer. The rebuttal, they say, has become something like, someone's already built this in our company, and what's unique about you? Or there is this small startup that built this for the 1/10 of the price, so why should we pay you much more than that? And the final prediction that I pulled out from this piece is that Dario predicts that there's a decent chance that powerful AI, in other words, AI smarter than Nobel Prize winners, could arrive within the next 1 to 2 years, although it could also take a bit longer. He bases this on the consistent scaling laws and the feedback loop where AI is already accelerating AI development itself. This week, we saw some glimmers of evidence to support this, including Google's new agentic vision in Gemini 3 Flash. So this is a new set of capabilities that uses a think, act, and observe loop, showing AI moving beyond single-pass analysis. The Gemini model now formulates plans, writes Python code to manipulate images, and observes the results before answering, which is a glimpse of the autonomous reasoning that Dario describes in his piece. So for product teams building AI-powered features where users upload artifacts, this could improve the accuracy of those features. So for example, e-commerce platforms could verify the product listings by counting items and confirming the condition of an item with annotated proof. Or insurance systems could assess damage claims by cropping and labeling each affected area. Google also revealed some impressive new updates to Chrome this week, including agentic browsing, nano banana capabilities, and deep integrations with Google Workspace that will allow users to perform end-to-end tasks that include using workspace apps like Docs.
In the demo, the user is reading a learning syllabus and needs to coordinate a study group. Instead of toggling back and forth, Gemini reads the syllabus in the main window and drafts an email in the side panel. Look at the prompt. It's asking Gemini to include 3 specific books from the syllabus with a brief synopsis, but written in the style of reality TV. So, Gemini pulls the data from the active tab and prepares the email for sending without the user ever having to lose their place in the text.
So I'll pop the link in the description to the full demo, but the deep integration with Workspace in particular will be difficult to replicate. One commentator described this as an absolutely murderous response to OpenAI's Atlas browser. Launching a browser, he says, was a mistake by OpenAI because it gave Google the cover it needed to launch Chrome AI without violating antitrust laws, because it is now a competitive response. So if users lean into these features, Google may be best positioned to build the ultimate personal assistant, which could take us one step closer to the super AI that Dario describes. OpenAI's own moves also echo Dario's sentiment. This week, the company launched a new scientific product called Prism, and OpenAI is so confident in AI's ability to make genuine new scientific discoveries that they're planning to take a cut of the discoveries made using this tool. This suggests that they believe that AI is approaching or has reached the smarter than Nobel Prize winners threshold that Dario describes, at least in scientific research. OpenAI is also using this new product to try to drive new revenue streams, so faced with an $11 billion black hole, ironically, they could become one of the major companies that will be hoping that Dario's predictions eventually come true. Given that if OpenAI's new product does result in new scientific discoveries, then they're set to take a cut of the revenue that it generates. But what do you think? Do you agree with Dario on his predictions, or do you think this is more of a PR piece that overflexes the capabilities of AI today in order to bump up the valuations of his company, and ultimately avoid an impending AI bubble burst? Let me know in the comments below, and on that note, I'll leave it there for this week. Thanks very much for listening and watching. I'll be back next week with another briefing.